So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove just this outer brake pad, and to do that you just get on the back side of it here and just pop it out, just push straight away. And be careful because there's still clips up here in the top and we don't want to mess with these, but they should pretty much stay in their spot for the first part. And up top there is a little clip assembly. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this piece needs to come out. This piece is attached to the brake, so you'll see as I pull it out here, there's a before shot. Now I'll pull it out. There we go. So as you can see, it slid right off of that. So here's your brake pad. These ones are still actually pretty darn good, but as you can see, there's a little loop in the top, and it was looped on top of this, kind of like this. So what I did was I pretty much took it out, and that's how we're gonna put it back in. And we'll show that step a little later. But now what I need is my brake compressor tool, and I got this at Sears. It was only about $10, and you can do the same thing with a C-clamp, but we left this old pad back in there because I'm going to be using this to push it back in. We're going to compress the pistons that are in here, and if you don't care about the old pad, then you can just push right on it, and that way you're not going to damage any of the O-rings on the pistons. Now the way this tool works is you have to unscrew it and separate the two pieces, and then you're going to put the first piece, and it's going to go in here and push against the caliper on this side, while the screw part goes in and pushes against the old pad. So I'll show you how that works, but you just pretty much slide this through the top and then you connect it. I'll show you when we get it going. Okay, so now I have this set up, and I'll see if you can see what's going on. We have the little bolt part is now pushing against the old pad, and then there's the little flat piece that looks like a caliper, and it's on the back side, so it's down in there. So I don't know if you can see, but now as I start to twist this on the back, it's pushing the bolt against that old brake pad, and it's compressing the piston. And remember, it's really important to have that cap off the brake fluid reservoir so that the fluid can be pushed back in. Doing it this way, you do not have to bleed your brakes, but when you get back in the car, you're going to have to pump the brakes. They're going to go to the floor the first time, and you're going to have to pump them about 5 times. So these brakes are dual piston. There's a piston on this side and a piston on that side. So I'm compressing this side, and then I'm going to need to take this off and put it back here and put it through this other hole and compress it there. And here's the pistons on the back. See, there's the 2 of them. And so as it compresses, one piston's going to go in, then we'll move it and it'll push the second one in. And that's going to open up the space in the middle so we can get the caliper back onto the new rotor. So now I'm on the other side. As you can see, I just put it through on the other side, and I'm compressing the other side down. And they sometimes they'll push in. They're independent pistons, but as you push on the old pad, sometimes they'll both go in. So anyway, that's pretty much all there is. And you can use a C-clamp if you don't have this tool. That'll just go on the back side, but you're basically just squeezing the pistons back in. So now I've compressed it to the point where it stopped. Don't sit there and try to, force it and break something, but I just, I've compressed it to the point where it's tough and it's as far as it wants to go. And so I'm going to undo this tool and then pop out this other brake pad. Now remember that clip I was talking about? Here it is again on the other side, up in here. I don't know if you can really see it, but basically we just want to pull it out. I want to get a good shot so you can see. That's, I guess, as good as I'm gonna get, but you want to just pull the pin out like that. Just pull it straight out of that little loop, and then you'll be able to take on the loop, just push on the loop, and you can pop this other thing right out. So I just pushed on that loop with my finger after I unhooked it. So here's my new rotor, and I'm just going to put it on right now, and then I'm going to take 2 lug nuts and tighten it down so that it'll stay into place. So as you can see, I put the rotor on, and then I temporarily just put 2 lug nuts on there, and now that that's going to hold that straight, I'm going to take the caliper without anything in it, and I'm going to put it back on, and I'm going to tighten it back onto the back side here with those 2 bolts that we took off in the front. And once it's on, then I'm going to take off one of the sides and swing it up and put the pads in. You could put the pads in right now, and I've done that before, but then it's pretty hard to get it to slide, and well, sometimes it's hard to get it to slide onto the rotor. It's really your choice. So here it is now. We have the rotor on and we have the caliper in place, and I'm just tightening these 2 back bolts. I want to get a good shot so you're never not confused of which ones I'm talking about, but they're just on the back side of the rotor there. Anyhow, so I'm just tightening these back on, and there's no pads inside of the caliper yet. And like I said, you could put the pads in there at this step that we're on now and force it onto the rotor, but sometimes I don't know, I just don't like to scratch things up, and you know, it can sometimes be hard to slide that caliper onto the new rotor with new pads. And I've done it before. I just think this other way is probably a little bit better, so you can decide which way you'd rather do it. But it's also easier to get the pads on this way, and I'll show you that. So now I have my breaker bar, my cheater bar on, and you want to be really careful that you don't over torque these bigger bolts. They were really hard to get off. So just be kind of gentle putting them on, just get them good and tight. And if you want to, you might want to use some Loctite, but they're pretty hard to get on and off. So I'd just try to get them to the same tightness that they were before. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is you're going to find this piece right here that has a little bit of the boot on it, and there's a little 14mm bolt on the end, and there's one on the top and the bottom. So we're going to loosen this one on the top and loosen this one on the bottom, and the bottom one we're actually going to remove all the way completely, and that way we're going to be able to pivot this caliper upwards. So as you can see, it's not a very long bolt, and so with that removed, we can now just pick this whole thing up and slide it up and over. So here we are now, and this is the only thing you really had to do if you're just doing the new pads, but we had to take the other piece off to get the rotor, the new rotor on. Now that it's slid up, we already have this compressed and open, and we're just going to put the new pads down in here. Now this is the old pad right here, and these clips on the side are different on the left and the right side pad as far as the same wheel, the one on this side, the one on this side. And so you can tell which one was the correct one. You can see the 2 piston marks that were put into this one, and it has the little ring on that side. So this is the brake caliper, or the brake pad, that we're going to need to put in on this piston side. So first we're going to take a little bit of this grease and just smear it onto this back side of both of these. Okay, so I'm going to start with the non-piston side. You can see these 2 match up. They have the rings where the pistons were, and we're just going to set it in here. And I don't know if the sun is not helping us out here or not, but down here there's just a little place where you're going to slide these into, back into the clip. You're going to go in the top and the bottom, and then you're going to slide this other little clip back in. As long as you get these inside there, that's where they needed to go. So this is what the new pad looks like when it's in its proper space. There was a little tab at the bottom that we slid in there, and then up here at the top, same thing. It's just, you need to make sure that it slides back into that groove. And then this little loop that we've been talking about all day, we're just going to put this pin back, bend it and put it back up inside there. So hopefully you can see this, but everything's back how it should be now. This little clip is inside the loop on the new pad, and then down here the pad's just made its way back into its spot there, and you should be able to see where this lines up and just put it back in where it came from. And we're going to do the same thing on the back side. There's no difference, it's exactly the same. Just make sure that you get this clip back on the inside of the loop. Okay, so now both of the pads are back in their spots where they belong, and we have the little clip thing going back through the loop. And so it's just as simple now as sliding this down over the top of them and wiggling it back and forth until it slides over the top. So as you can see, this now just slides right over the top, and you just have to push this part back in until it lines up. That bolt's already still in the top, so we'll just put the bolt in here, tighten it up, and then tighten this one back up. And they weren't very loose, so I'd just recommend getting them, you know, good and snug. So both of these are now nice and snug. Remember, it can be a little confusing when you have a bolt that's going on backwards, which way is tight and loose, and so set it up here first on your ratchet, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and then put it on the back and tighten her up. But that's pretty much all that there is to it. Now we'll check also, since we've compressed it, you can see that the fluid level has risen significantly, and some of it will drop back down when you pump the brakes. But like I said, I overfilled it, or I added some when it was low, when the brakes were worn down, so I know I'm going to need to take some of this out of here. So this is the contraption I came up with. I just took the bottle, I wrote "do not use, it's poisonous, blah blah blah," and so I just put the stem down in the brake thing, and then as I squeeze the trigger, I just shoot it into the old bottle, and that's one way to siphon it without making a mess. So now that I've siphoned this out quite a ways, I'm going to put the cap back on it, and that way when I pump the brakes it'll be able to compress it correctly. And so the next step is just to put the wheel back on and drop the car and pump the brakes. Now I tried not to touch the rotors too much. It was a pretty clean job, but I also like to take some brake parts cleaner and just make sure everything's clean. And just make sure when you're using this stuff that you don't use it to the exposed O-rings on the caliper pistons, because that's probably not very good for the rubber. But just get it all cleaned up, and then with a clean rag just kind of try to get some of the fingerprints off of it.